Hey, today we're going to discuss a very interesting topic. Quite often got a lot of data in the 2D. For example, this one is one of the characteristics of pivot format is that you have the textual content, both the row header and the column header, layout in different directions. When the information is in this kind of format, when you look at what's meaning of this 245, you actually need to look at the left and also going to the top. The intersections gray area to have the underlying meaning revealed is good for presentation. The thing is that if you want to summarize this in a different format, you got to do the whole structure to re-engineer a template. So that's why in this kind of tabular format on the right-hand side from the column G to column I is more user-friendly because based on this tabular format, we can pivot, and also based on this, we can do variations about your calculation analytic things. So today we're going to use the Lambda function to customize to build our own function so we can have this kind of tabular things ready. So now I'm going to write the formula, which is the unpivot customized function to type in. I close the bracket and then see with just one formula, we can actually unpivot this pivot and make it into a tabular format so we can have more calculations, more user-friendly. So let's just get started. So first, I'm going to copy this sample data, jump back to our new workbook and paste. We observe that if we want to transform this into a tabular format, we need to lay out first. We also need to lay our day. And you can see in such a way, we're tier 2D array into 3 areas. We need to have a column for the column header. We also need to have a column. So this part, 1. So now let's just make this, for example, I'm going to use this. First, we need to think about formula, extract the ACT from ACT to D and repeat 4 times for them. That's why we have that on list over, right? We just need 2 array joined together. If I join this 2, once we join, we get another 2D array, but the amount of this data is correct. We have 24 count of the combination. If we're going back whole thing, if I select the column G, you can see we have 25, but if we remove the header, we have 24 exactly. That's because for each of the state, they're going to repeat 4 times. So ACT has a day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. New South Wales has a day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. That's why 4 times 6. We're going back to here. So we got the correct amount. And if we look at each of the line, ACT has a day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. So exactly what are we? This is actually in the 2D. We want it into 1 dimension, which is exactly just under column G. Luckily, we have this 2 column for us to transform array into just 1 column. And with this formula, now we have this 25 minus 1, 24 count of, which is good, but we don't want the day 1, day 2, day 4, because they are supposed to be under H, right? So how you may use the left to extract only the certain characters about. Looks like here, this dynamic one, the NT has only 2. So we need to make it more dynamic. So the one I'm using is the text before, a certain amount of text before a set delimiter. So for this one, I'm going to use text is to column part. Now I'm going to pretend I'm going to have that hash sign in between of my data. And then I got that. That's NA, that's fine because I don't operator when I try to do the text before. That's fine. We can add this over here, say, and now if I say that, so first 3 things together, the state and also a hash sign. I mix them together and then I transform into 1 dimension. And then I'm using the dash that I just added before as a separator to get a text before that dash. So in this way, we got a dynamic range. For day, it's pretty easy. There's a text before and also there's a tag feature. I'll get everything after that if I just enter. Now, so we have finished this 2 column. And then we come to the cell. Cells is pretty easy. So a 2D array, if we try to transform that into just 1 column, we can use, and then we select, and then we close that, we enter. Okay, now we successfully dismantled this whole pivot table. We have worked out the solution, but we need to embed everything into just 1 column so we can use. So in here, we're going to use H stack, which is represent the horizontally stacked. So in here, we just need to copy the first cell of the formula, and then we go here. And before that, I'm going to use, say, and then we cut. So we know that in the hashtag, we need 3 components. First is the state, second is the date, and third. So for the date, I just copy this part before, and then going to here, we use a comma to separate to enter. And then we repeat the same thing going to the cells. We copy the one that baby step generated, and then we go into the last. So in this H stack, we have 3 components. First, second, third is the cells. Once we have done that, finished that, and then we click enter. Now we have everything ready. We don't need this. We can just, let's say, header to here. Now with this one, I'm able to unpivot that. But there's one thing before we jump into the Lambda function. Let's just try to export. You need to put an argument, and you need to put another argument, and also you need to tell how we're going to do with those arguments. User can put two variables. You give two variables to this Lambda to calculate the sum of x and y. We have unpivot, and once I pass the pivot data, that's the calculation that I need. And how to unpivot, I have embedded everything in G2 cells. So what do we need to do? We need to think about a way to, for example, let's just try to type that again, say equal Lambda. We put a source into our input, and we have another. But there's something that we need to change this kind of absolute, because they're referencing all over the place. But we can see there's a repetition. For example, this one time, this bit has been repeated one time, this part. So actually 3 parts. First is a row header, second is a column header, and third is the data, which is the number. So we need to let them referencing the same data set and then do different transformation. So what we need to do is figure out how to transform this bit. We need to translate that. So how do we use a formula to just simply rename this? I can say equal and then enter, just one more place. I have this whole data set reviewed over here, but I to A7, which is the first one. We can actually do some transformation against this test and take, letting you to choose a particular row from the dataset. So here I need all the rows. I skip this part. I need just first pick one in the argument and enter. Now I got this kind of one column, which is the header for date, but I don't need the 0. So you can use another one. Drop is let you to drop a certain column or row. I just need to drop the first row data. I don't care. So to generate a data set from A2 to A7, we can actually use this formula to generate that. So let's just replace later. So for the B1 to BE1 is actually the column head. What we can do is we can use this area, and also I can just for the tag this time I need the first row, but I need all column. I can omit that part, and since I have the 0 in the front, I don't need that, so I can drop that first column. So for the row part, I just skip that. For the column, once I've done, I have this reviewed correctly. And then we come data range part. We can say test again. That's the whole thing. This part is pretty easy. We just don't need we just drop that. So now I review each of the data range, and I'm only using test to do the transformation. So I'm able to get the data range that I need for this stack formula. A7, I'm going to replace it with this formula. So I go into this bit, we change this A2 to that. There's an that. Once we're done, data set has no change, all good. So next time, the B1 to E1 with that, and there's another B1 to E1 here, replace that, enter. Nothing has changed, all good. Now the B2 to 7, and copy this bit and go into enter. Now if we just review this, you can see that all the blue text is say there's a variable about the test, and that test E1. Once I put the test in, all the rest is, and they always transform my pivot data into. Now I'm ready, so I'm gonna remove because I don't need this bit. And I'm say, so we're gonna accept one variable, and then for the source, I'm gonna do this kind of calculation. But there's difference because our variable is source. I need to swap this test. So my Lambda accept one variable source, and also doing the calculation against, and everything has been done. Okay, that'll be an arrow. That's because we need to put in the end of that, we use two bracket, and in between put this. So this is telling Lambda function say, please use this test data range to test my Lambda function. So now the very important step, we need to embed it into this Excel workbook and give it an official name so we can code it out like any other function, native function. So we need to copy the part going here. We just exit that. We're going to, and then here's in the name manager, we can now delete, and then we create a new one. This will be just a capital. Once I have this, I can decide a scope for this. The default scope is applied to this whole workbook. So no matter which worksheet you're on, you are able to trigger that and apply. And refer to is where we put this kind of formulas. You can see I didn't bracket with the test because that's only when you're doing the testing. This part is all good. Now we have this unpivot function in this workbook. Now can delete now equal to, while I'm typing this Intel sensor in Excel is actually able to, and it looks like there's something missing. Why? Because there's description about that. A little bit customization. We go into formulas and we just say edit. In this we can say yes. Now close that. Now we just retype that again. Equal to, you can see for each of the formula that has been designed by Excel itself, there's name of the function and also there's a hint. If I go one, now I can have this reviewed for my users so they know how to use this customized function to unpivot format data range. I click tab. Remember the parameter that we set, the argument is the source. So the source I close this bracket. Now my data, based on this unpivot data, you can do a lot of things. For example, how do you filter the data? You can just reference to G2 and use your reference the whole data set of this dynamic range. And then I'm going to say include to G and hash sign. I'm going to say, oh, this data set, I need every row, but I need just the first column. I can, if this cell, but now it's nothing. That's fine. Now you get, then if we change this to NT, we just change this to NT. Let's just say if I want to use this data based on two criteria in conjunction, and then you can paste, and then use a bracket to insert that bit. And then we can use the star sign to represent in multiple, and then I'm going to paste it. I'm going to use a bracket again and then paste again. This time I don't want that because I want we drop it first, and then we take the data and everything over here will be equal to this state. And now I'm able to get the data from different things. For example, if I want to look at about day one data, you can see. And also I can change this, right? You got this. And then I don't like Tasmania. I want the Queensland data for the day two. But easily using this unpivot, we are able to transform our pivot data in more analyzable shape. So we can even do Control All, and the thing that you like is the pivot and into. You can have the things ready pretty easily, say state. That's all for today, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's app. If you like this channel, please subscribe.